G'day everyone, I'm Rowan Connolly.
I'm Mark Fine.
And we're here to wrap up a cracking round 2 of AFL football, the Easter round finey, and a bit of a football marathon, but gee, it was worth the wait.
Well, it had its highs and lows. It was, I guess, at times, the football wasn't of the highest standard, but then at other times, it's exactly what you want football to be. Sunny day, take Monday. Big crowd and a grandstand nail-biting finish.
And already only 2 games in, but, you know, a couple of clubs definitely in a spot of bother, I think it's fair to say, and a couple of clubs looking like they really might emerge. We've got a great even competition.
The interstate teams are tracking well. We've got Gold Coast going better than people would have thought, but then again, their test still comes shortly. West Coast, a different look, but maybe reports of their demise were premature.
As Mark Twain might have put it if he was an AFL fan. Okay, we're going to talk about every game, 3 of them in detail, in our wraparound. Rightio, Finey, 3 games in detail. We have to start with the last and best of them. Easter Monday, the Cats and the Hawks. Again, they did it again. They turned on an absolute classic.
I think they called Karl Malone in the NBA the postman because he always delivered. This game is postal in its very own special way. What a great game of football, and doesn't cream rise to the top. Wasn't it exhilarating at the end of the game to see the Stars try to lift their respective sides over the line?
Yeah, well, Tom Mitchell made the running for the Hawks, obviously, but yeah, Ablett and Dangerfield in particular, those last 15 minutes.
How about that moment when Rioli had the ball in Hawthorn's forward line and legally low and tough Dangerfield clattered into him and came out with the ball?
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing about this game too. I'd love to be able to wheel out that phrase, no matter where they are on the ladder, but I don't think it's applicable because I think they're both going to be pretty high on the ladder. I think the Hawks are looking fantastic.
They are. Geelong, of course, will welcome the fact that they get back to Geelong, to their newly named GMHBA Stadium, and will have home games there that they should be able to rack points up in. But at the MCG over 2 weeks, they've played in a couple of nail-biters. And whilst Richmond showed them up in the finals last year, there's a slightly different look to the team. With the likes of Kelly being added to the side, there is more pace and more ground coverage.
And no Duncan today,
That's
remember
true.
that as well. I mean, what does it say about both teams? I think, no doubt, absolute pluses for the Hawks. They're in a much better position than they were 12 months ago, obviously. I looked at that last 15 minutes the Cats rolled out after being 25 points down, and I thought, geez, amazing when you play at that level. Can you play at that level for 100 minutes? And I suspect they can't.
Look, the one thing the Cats have on their side, it's not going to be 100 minutes of football, but true champions, and they do have 3 on the ball in Selwood, Dangerfield and Ablett, when the game is close, they lift. They are capable of finding their best when it matters, and you see it time and time again. I remember when my own Saints were at their best, it was inevitably Harvey, Hayes, who would lift in the final minutes to get results. Now, to have 3 such players who all believe that they can win you the match is invaluable. And look, they had it when Bartel was there with Ablett and Selwood, and now they've got a trio that can do it again. And remember, that first trio I mentioned won them flags.
I want to talk about Jared Roughead because, you know, given what he's been through, just to come back and play as many minutes as he did last year was a feat in itself. But he's back to Ruffy at nearly his best, isn't he? He was awesome today.
Look, up forward, again, cometh the hour, cometh the man. He took a great mark early in the last quarter and converted for his first goal. His great body work gave him a chance to kick the winning point. But actually, when it was, I think, Ruffy at his best, and we'll see more of this coming off the wing and in the ruck as a pinch hitter, a big-sized run-through player through the middle. Yeah, he's devastating.
Well, speaking about the ruck, the other guy I wanted to make special mention of was Big Boy McAvoy because he was terrific, I thought.
So, did Geelong do the right thing or wrong thing? They played Stanley, they played Blitzarves.
Yeah. No, I reckon they might have pulled the wrong rein there.
Yeah, I still think that they were happy with their return from those 2 players. Maybe it was the second game Was it Radagulu or?
Yeah, he was a late withdrawal.
Yeah,
Wasn't it? I mean, look,
that could have provided, because he's big. He
Some
could
chop
have
out.
some jumping shot.
I mean, look, Zach Smith's not an overly physical ruckman anyway, is he? So
he's got the size though to grind it out. The other highlight for me in the game, there were many highlights, I shouldn't say that, but one of the other highlights for me in the game was the return to the very best of Isaac Smith. Now,
yeah, he was good.
Now, he combined everything that's good about Isaac Smith. He's long kicking, he's beautiful, he's a silky mover, but I think last year he lost confidence with his hands and his ability to bend down and pick the ball up. He played some beautiful football, and it was not surprising that in the last minute of the game, he got the ball a couple of times to propel his team forward.
Yeah, no, he was terrific, and a bit of deja vu there. He had the chance to win the game for the Hawks against the Cats last year. I thought it was going to unfold again, but he probably did a bit more this time. Very quickly, if we're framing a final 8 now, are they both in it?
Yes, they are.
Yeah, I reckon I'd have them both in it as well, and potentially very high up.
Hawthorn did pay a price today, Sean Burgoyne getting injured.
Yeah, well, he'll probably miss a few weeks, but I want to roll out another cliche, Peter McKenna in the 1980s. You can never write Hawthorn off, Finey.
And that's, Peter, as true today as it was then.
Absolutely, 30 years on. All right, let's move on to our second feature game. And not as good a game, but the ramifications might be a bit deeper or more significant. And I'm speaking, of course, of West Coast win over the Western Bulldogs at Etihad Stadium on Sunday. Well, I tell you what, I felt the writing was on the wall pretty early in this game. The Eagles wasted a few chances early, but when they finally got their kicking boots on, it was a massacre at stages. I mean, there was one goal the Eagles kicked where they had 3 guys raffling the ball in the goal square with no opposition. The stat that really caught my eye was they were up 23 contested possessions on the Bulldogs at half-time. That is an amazing tally when you remember that the Bulldogs in the year they won the flag were clear number 1 for contested ball, and that last week, even though West Coast played all right last week, they had the biggest negative differential of any side in the league, and the Bulldogs had the second worst, and yet the Bulldogs were 23 down on the worst contested ball side out of round 1. That is not good news.
Without going to the statistics, just watching the game, West Coast, who've got an unheralded midfield, win the midfield battle against a side that was once vaunted for having so many midfield options. Venables, who was mentioned prior to the season as a possible fix to some of those problems, lived up good to his reputation. He was hard at it, but he was able to add 3 goals to some good hard-bodied work. He's got a nice frame about him.
Credit to Jack Darling too. I mean, with Josh Kennedy out, the heat's really been on Darling to stand up, and I thought he was great.
He was great. That Bulldogs backline without Morris and Adams, young Norton tried. Players like Zane Cordy and other former premiership players are a shadow of their former selves. Post-game, Luke Beveridge said that this is a million miles from the premiership team. It's now a distant memory, and I think he was stating what most people feel, that this is no longer a hangover. This is a reality. This is now their current situation.
Well, they went into the game with only literally exactly half of that premiership side, but I've got to demur there. I think it still is a hangover, and the proof of the pudding, or I never get that phrase right, but it's the fact that so many players from that premiership side that are still there are still below their best. You know, they had a list of 40-odd players. There were, I think, arguably 3 last year who improved on their 2016 form. And a lot of them are just going up and down the one spot. Injuries, here's the other point, Finey. They had almost the worst run of injuries in the league in 2016. And every time it happened, someone came in, did the role they had to do, and they never missed a beat. That's happening now, and it seems to throw everything out. And that says to me that these young guys coming in now, guys like Norton, Ed Richards, who looked all right despite them getting thrashed.
Look, Tim English,
he's
been all right.
But they don't have that structure around them to make it easier on them. It's like the whole basis of what they put together seems to be crumbling. And I just keep asking myself, incredibly, it's only 24 games since they won the flag, but has the hunger of too many of these guys been sated?
I mean, I'll ask you this question. Who do you think will top their goal kicking this year?
Someone with not many, the way they're going. Oh, well, Tory Dixon's not even playing, is he?
Boyd hasn't played. Dixon.
No.
Shaki's probably not going to.
Well, they'll have to play Shaki, surely.
Only if he warrants it.
Yeah.
Not on what anybody has seen so far.
See, it's interesting. Bevo made reference to their skills, and there's no doubt their skills were off and it hurt them on the turnover. But before you execute the skills, you've got to win the ball. And they won that flag off the back of that fierce attack on the contest and on the ball and on the opponent. And that is palpably missing. And I'd reckon you've got to restore that before you worry about the skills.
You know, there's a sign when you play West Coast that your entire team, especially your forward line, hasn't been vigilant in an obvious requirement. And that is if Shannon Hearn, the West Coast captain, gets plenty of the ball and is damaging, then you have not been good to your pre-game planning. Now, he was close to best on ground, Hearn.
Geez, a beautiful kick, isn't he?
Teams don't allow him to do that. It's part of every team's pre-match preparation to short-circuit Hearn getting the ball easily out of the back line and giving them a 70-metre pinpoint kick up the field, yet he did it regularly against the Bulldogs. That's a bad sign for the Doggies, and once again a reminder of how good Hearn is.
Yeah. Well, finishing up on the Eagles very quickly, in a nutshell, I think we all expected them to not only slide out of the 8, but perhaps a fair way down the ladder. You'd have to say pretty respectable last week against the Swans and really impressive this week. So maybe they're going to be a bit better than we thought.
When Kennedy comes back, how does that forward line look?
Potent would be my answer to that.
Ryan plays off his hip pocket?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. No, absolutely.
Even Lacroix looked all right.
He did. Let's move on to our third feature game. I thought this was a really significant game too, and until the Easter Monday epic, I would have thought easily the best game this season, certainly the most intense, and that was Sydney versus Port Adelaide, Twilight Sunday up at the SCG. And yes, I know I've been pretty bullish about the Power along with a few other people, but absolute vindication, I reckon, of what they've done. They look fantastic. I'll tell you what I loved about it. I'll try and do it as concisely as possible. They absorbed an enormous amount of punishment early on without getting too far behind on the scoreboard. Half-time, I think the inside 50s were like 31-14, and yet they're only, I think, 14 points down. But here's the big ace that Ken Hinkley has up his sleeve. The versatility of that whole midfield/forward group. So you've already got Wingard and Gray, who are potential All-Australian players as either mids or small forwards. Not many clubs can boast even two of them.
No, true.
Now you throw in Travis Boak, who added to his skill set last year by going forward. You throw in Watts, Motlop and Rockcliffe, the three recruits, all of whom have and can play as forwards or mids. So at half-time, what does he do? He puts Dixon in the ruck, Marshall came off for a spell, Westhoff went to the wing, and at one stage their forward setup had Watts, but the rest of it was Boak, Gray, Wingard, Ebert, and immediately they turn around. Boak kicked two, they looked revitalised, and their defence, I love their defence. Here's the other thing about Port. I could go on about this all day. I love watching them. They were second for points scored last year and they were second for fewest points conceded. That is a balance between attack and defence, which even Richmond, even Adelaide couldn't boast.
Yeah, I was a little slow on the uptake, but I can't see too many faults in Port Adelaide as we sit. And Port Adelaide without Ryder was going to be a test, one that they were able to, certainly against Sydney, which has rucking weakness, come through with flying colours. A lot of people point to the inclusion of Motlop, Watts and Rockcliffe, and fair enough. But there are three players that are now part of that team that have been at Port Adelaide for a little while, just cooling their jets, learning their trade in the Sandful, and they are Todd Marshall. He's a good kid.
Yeah.
Made his debut last year against the Doggies in Ballarat.
Yep. And Mars Stadium.
Yeah. Well, he's well and truly at home here, right on earth. The defensive and forward potential of Dougal Howard is unlimited.
Yep.
Look, he had a tough job on Buddy, and Buddy was great.
Yep.
But Howard kept at it.
Yep.
And Riley Bonner, well...
Yeah, he's a gun, isn't he?
Kicked the ceiling goal.
He did.
He kicks the ball a country mile. He's bullet a gate. He's a combination of Pittard, who they have out of the team, and Wines, who plays in the midfield. He sort of combines a bit of both.
Well, speaking of Bulls, what about Sam Powell-Pepper? He's in his second season of AFL footy.
Nice pick-up, he's from the West, I think.
But he's got a body like a bloke who's played for 10 years, and now with that nude nut, he looks even older. He's a bit of a man-child, I reckon, Powell-Pepper.
Now the Swans.
Go on.
I've got concerns about their backline.
Yeah, I don't.
The backline?
No, I just reckon that was a really, really competitive loss. I don't reckon they did too much wrong. Well, tell us, though, what are you concerned?
Well, that backline, look, Grundy is getting older.
Yeah.
And you're starting to feel it. Young Melican is okay, but I think he's susceptible. You know, I had a feeling when they were being bombarded a little by Port Adelaide that he was not quite, he wasn't there to just repel them.
Well, don't forget they've got Aaliyah in reserve.
Well, then they didn't play him last year, and he had a slow start because of injury, but they've got an option to play him, and they're choosing not to. So I didn't feel that there was a steadying force in the back line.
Yeah, no, it's a fair comment. If you ask me instinctively, my biggest concern with them probably would have been the other end of the ground, because it does look to me, and it's perfectly understandable because he's so good, but they seem to be more buddy conscious than they have been in the past, I reckon.
Yeah, well, you know what? Sam Reid tries to fill the inadequacies at both ends of the ground. And against Port Adelaide, he was unable to do either.
Yeah.
Some weeks he does.
Yeah.
But they lost Tippett. It didn't work out. Are they one big man short?
Yeah, well, Naismith going down for the season certainly hasn't helped them, has it? So, yeah, look, not too many concerns, but, probably need to do a bit of tweaking here and there. All right, there are our 3 feature games. We're now going to roll through the remaining 6 in chronological order, and it seems like a long, long time ago now, but last Thursday evening we had the grand final rematch final. You hesitate to speak of redemption. You can't redeem a grand final loss. It's there in perpetuity. However, 2 blokes who were conspicuous by their non-performance in that game played ripping games, and I speak of Josh Jenkins and Tex Walker.
Tex Walker started off fumbly. It was his first game of the season, and he looked to have a bit of ring rust, and he was able to just get his hands on one in the second quarter. He's such a beautiful kick of goal that it gave him the confidence to therefore follow up, and by midway through the last quarter, their captain was a potential match winner and then became the match winner.
Incidentally, speaking about match winner, how good is Rory Laird? Gee, I love Rory Laird.
Yeah, 40-plus possessions. Was he in Damien Hardwick's blind spot?
Well, yeah.
He really should have been attended to at some point. He was running amok for the entire game.
Look, they've added a bit to this mix too. I like the look of Fogarty. I think he's going to be a regular in their best 22.
Not the first cult hero down at Adelaide. They love their cult heroes.
They do. Well, they've got a few to choose from now. What about the Tigers, just quickly? Anything to worry about, or is it just the as Paul Keating might have put it, the downer they had to have?
Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much, other than it's a game that they actually should have won halfway through the last quarter because Crouch was off.
Yeah.
They got within a couple of kicks.
Yeah.
Martin was again being influential, and they got run over the top of. Not a problem once. You don't want to see it happen too often.
No, I'm tipping they'll respond pretty vigorously. Okay, let's move on to the second ever Good Friday game. And, look, I could do a pretty ordinary joke about crucifixion or whatever, but I don't know, I reckon I probably would have preferred to have been nailed to a cross than watch the first half of this game. It was a shocker.
The first half of the game was as bad as AFL football could possibly be. Unless you saw North Melbourne St Kilda last year, which was even worse.
Really?
But North Melbourne were able to find something in that second half. Ben Brown was an obvious target, and the scoreboard return in the second half mirrored his dominance. St Kilda played exactly the same football in the second half as the first half, inept by foot, slow to react, second to most situations, and even though at three-quarter time they were 8 points behind, if you panned around the ground and looked at St Kilda supporters' faces, it's as though everybody knew that they were playing the sort of football that would result in a 50-point loss, because St Kilda supporters, of which I'm one, know their team, and they deserve to lose by 50.
Well, we've got to be quick here, but I mean, good effort by North. I think a team that a lot of people thought would be bottom of the ladder. Do you think, have St Kilda supporters got that feeling of, okay, we've put 5 years into a rebuild and it's amounted to a side that's still a fair way short of the mark?
Yeah. And there are teams that are sort of middle of the table treading water, and we've seen in the recent years, say Richmond, really last year got that huge fill-up from new players, young players, invigorating the team. And Hardwick was at pains all throughout the year to point out how great it was to have these young guys putting pressure on for spots. Now at St Kilda, there are guys that know that they can rock up every week and get picked in an AFL team that have no right to do so on the way they play.
Strong words, and I know they're very hard felt because you do have more than a soft spot for them. Okay, let's move on to Saturday afternoon, Etihad Stadium, Carlton Gold Coast. And speaking about, well, we did in another game, writing being on the wall, what about this? The Suns just came out fired up. 5-5 to 1-1 at quarter time. Probably should have been all over then, and it was all over pretty much by not far into the third quarter. I'm loving watching the Suns. They've really, I think Stuart Dew, it's fair to say already, he's harnessed the skill that they, or the talent that they always had. A fantastic spearhead in Tom Lynch. But he's...
Well, finally, a really good return. Tom Lynch has rarely kicked more than 4 goals in a game. He kicks 4.5. He's got 4 at half time or 5 at half time. You think this is the week, and he doesn't build on it.
I was going to say 10, but that was the other Tom Lynch, wasn't it?
That's exactly right.
But what I was going to say was he's harnessed that natural ability to a much better work ethic and a more defensive mindset, I think, and it's a really good blend.
Martin and Bose are having some influence.
Yeah, Bose been good.
Jared Lyons is a good pickup. Witts again does well in the ruck, even though Paulson in for Cruiser is a big loss for Carlton just before the game. Well, it might have happened earlier, but that is a big late withdrawal. And as for Carlton, the 2 Curnails were pretty good. Eddie got a lot of it.
Yeah.
Doesn't always use it perfectly. Charlie's a great target, very athletic, and really the comparisons to Koutofides are well founded. But beyond that, I know Jacob Wiedering took a hit, but I wonder what his best spot on the ground is.
Well, he looks like a guy that has been messed around a bit and really needs to be settled down. I'm not jumping off the Blues just yet. I like the way they've tried to attack a bit more, and you've got to give up a bit to get some in an attacking defensive sense. So let's see how they go against the Pies, and that really will be a case of no matter where they are on the ladder, finally, because they're both down the arse end of the ladder. And I mentioned Pies. We move on now to the MCG later that afternoon, and it's got to be said, a much better effort by the Pies than the previous week.
They were the better team for most of the day.
Against GWS, of course, losing by 16 points in the end. However, maybe not Groundhog Day, but ultimately the Achilles heel that cost them victory was their lack of skill and their inability to both hit enough targets and convert their scoring opportunities.
Yeah. By the way, just Tim Brimhead. I mean, that was...
Yeah, it was a shocker.
Yeah, look, it was a courageous attempt to try and get a goal near the goal line. He wrapped his leg around the post. Of course, most people have seen the footage. But for a young player on the periphery of an AFL side who gets an opportunity with the late withdrawal of Ben Reid, that is just... You know, it's gut-wrenching for family, for Tim. So thoughts go out to a player for whom AFL football is no certainty, and as he heads into his rehab, it's a long way away.
So where do you sit with the Pies? Like, if you're a Collingwood fan, are you encouraged by that, or do you think, we're still short of the mark even when we played our absolute optimum?
That's the problem. I thought that they were playing really well.
Yeah.
It just seems to me to be a long way. They were playing in such a good midfield and really mixing it with them. In fact, to me, they were the more invested side in the loose ball, the hard ball, get everything you want from a team. But when the ball's on the halfback flank for Collingwood, gee, it's a long way home. And to me, it often feels like it's a long way home for a rush shot at goal or a shot from the boundary. It doesn't all funnel down to the goal square for them. It's too much hard work for too little a return.
I agree with that. Very, very quick word on GWS. Got to stop mucking around with the ball. It's like it's like they've been touched by that thing about we're a team of individuals, so we're going to show what a great team we are. They overdo it. Just do the percentage thing, and they'll win far, far more games than they lose. They will anyway. Got to move on.
Toby Green's really important to them. He was
Oh,
a late
yeah,
withdrawal.
he is.
And the forward line, it looked pretty... Thankfully, they had their kicking boots on. It just looked devoid of a lot of great options.
No, they can play a lot better than that. No question. Okay, 2 more to go. Brisbane-Melbourne up at the Gabba Saturday evening. Quite remarkable, really. The Demons doing it on the bit, 7 goals up, and then they stopped as if shot. And credit to the Lions, they nearly pulled it out of the fire.
Melbourne... I saw this in a JLT game against St Kilda when they were up by 40 points at the start of the third quarter.
I saw that going down Casey.
Yeah, with 5 minutes to go. In that quarter, they were behind.
Yeah.
They had a quarter against Geelong, really, that cost them the game. Cost them the game. I felt a lapse of concentration there. And now again against Brisbane. This is a side that, if they are going to fulfil the promise of finishing in the 8, even having a rattle at the top 4, have to play 4 quarters of footy.
It's pretty symptomatic of last season too. I think there was a stat about that basically saying they had more dud quarters than most other teams that were in the top half of the ladder. I will say this though, once upon a time, once Brisbane had levelled the scores, that would have been it for Melbourne. But they were able to bounce back and end up winning by 26 points. So... look, Hogan looking better and better, and I'm loving the Hogan-Garlett combination too, 9 goals between them.
And for Brisbane, Cameron has had 2 great games for them.
He has.
And great to see Alan Christensen, who was a real weapon at Geelong, after a couple of troubled years, start to return to some good football.
Yeah, they'll win some games this year. Look, I mean, maybe they'll end up on the bottom of the ladder again, but you'll look at them and think, this is a side that has... potential over the next couple of years.
It's that forward line, again, that lets them down. I think. All right, final game of the round to discuss, and it was Optus Stadium in Perth on Saturday evening, Fremantle and Essendon. 16-point margin to the Dockers in the end. You'll look at that scoreline and think, ooh, that must have been tight. Let me give you the tip. It wasn't. Essendon kicked 3 goals in junk time. The result was never in doubt for the whole of the second half, and I reckon, to be brutally honest, for about 5 minutes in the first quarter, the Bombers never looked like it. Once again, they hit the road and lose all semblance of form and confidence. I felt that Essendon were a bit short-handed midfield-wise.
Yeah.
Now, is this going to be a recurring theme?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I said this. Look, you pick up Stringer, Sard and Smith. Smith, by the way, has been terrific. I reckon he's been their best player in 2.
Yeah, he's worked diligently.
But Stringer...
But also Smith is small.
Yeah. Yeah, but he's added something. Stringer was always going to be a gamble. Could he actually play that midfield role? And Sard's a running defender. And look, Sard's had his moments as well. But essentially, you're adding one bona fide midfielder to that setup. And it was a midfield that was horribly deficient, was ranked very low for contested ball clearances. They're not hard enough. They put their back line under too much pressure. And frankly, while Brown and Hartley stood up against the Crows, with the ball coming in the way it was against the Dockers, they weren't going to get the job done. So
Taberner's had a good start to the season.
He has,
He was good in the loss even last week.
Yeah, and I must say I haven't rated him, but he's impressed me the last 2 weeks. So, yeah, look, I marked Freo right down. I might have got them wrong. It does look... Do you reckon Ross Lyon has finally bitten the bullet and gone, my teams have to play a more aggressive attacking style footy?
There was not a semblance of backward play or bringing the game to a dead halt. In fact, it was Essendon at times who were gasping for oxygen, looking to slow the game down. It was quite a reversal of roles at certain times. Maybe going into state, it's hot over in Perth, but Essendon didn't seem to have that run and dash. Fremantle did for much of the game, which is very much against type.
Yeah, no, I agree. You did mention hot too, and that is our end of the wraparound segment. But time now for hot or not. Rightio, time for hot or not. 3 likes or dislikes from us each about round 2. I'm going to kick us off, Finey. I'm going to start with Gold Coast midfielder Jared Lyons. I love this guy. I reckon he's one of the most undersold mids in the competition. Absolutely fantastic against the Blues. 36 touches, 6 tackles, kicked a goal. He was a bargain basement pickup for the Suns last year, finished 6th in their best and fairest. Frankly, I can't work out why Adelaide was so prepared to let him go. He's been a gun.
Look, I was really bullish on him last season, and without Ablett there, he's probably even going to take another step. He's a great ball winner. He's courageous. He's quite good in front of goal. He's a nice steady kick. And it sort of begs the question as to clubs that are just going all out to find midfielders. Of course, Jared Lyons is on the market. Why you would let him go, as you said? Sure, they've got the Crouchers and Sloane in Adelaide, but can you ever have too many good midfielders?
I wouldn't have thought so. I did ask around a bit about this, and the views seemed to be that the coach just wasn't sold on him, and that's the coach's prerogative. But frankly, I don't see any deficiencies in his game.
What could the knock have been? Pace?
Possibly.
He's a grinding sort of mover, but he gets to each contest.
And he's efficient, I reckon, too. He's got a decent footy brain. The Suns have done pretty well with their pickups from other clubs in the last couple of years. I reckon Jared Witts.
Well, Witts working to Lions,
Yeah.
both virtual cast-offs 2 seasons ago. In what was a tough year last year for Gold Coast, they came through and they're following it up this year in wins.
Yeah, as the old Sporting Globe would have put it, Witts to Lions is good football. Okay, you're up.
Connolly to Fine. I wonder if it's good vodcasting. My first hot goes to the stand-in West Coast coach, Jamie Graham. Right. Look, he had a period at St Kilda, also with Sandringham in the VFL, returned west, where he played some football, and just the fact that he was invested with the responsibility of coming over here and taking the team when Adam Simpson was called for a family emergency speaks volumes of where he sits in the system. Obviously, the day went very well for them, but he's just a name on the horizon amongst a couple of lesser-known possible future AFL coaches.
Yeah, I remember him as a handy sort of player too. Not that should have any indication of how good a coach you can be, but
yeah. Not too good a player. That's always been the rule, hasn't it?
Well, I like to see it when lower profile guys end up with senior coaching gigs. I think it's great.
Well, you can't get much lower profile than Jamie, all due respect, and his career didn't make the headlines, but maybe his coaching will. Back to you.
All right, I've got a not now. We spoke last week about Collingwood and Groundhog Day, how the Pies just keep falling victim to the same weaknesses. Well, Groundhog Day for the Bombers in round 2 because they got on a plane. And frankly, every time they get on a plane, I don't know what happens, but they're hopeless. They have now lost 17 of their last 19 games on the road since the start of 2015. And this was a game, and look, granted, Fremantle played really well, taking nothing away from them. But if Essendon are aspiring to be a top 4 team, they're the sort of road wins you have to knock over. And the Groundhog Day element was it played out like so many of those other road trips they've done in the last few years have. They got jumped at the start. They worked their way back into it and then just completely run over in the second half. And to be honest, apart from about 5 minutes in the first quarter, they never at any stage looked like winning.
It's fair to say that the trip to West is a difficult one, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, it is.
Regardless of the fact that there's a new ground to play at, it's still the same parochial crowd. It feels the same.
Yeah.
It just begs the question, Gold Coast, 2 and Zip, are at home next week to Fremantle.
Yeah.
At Optus in Perth.
It's not a good deal. I'll tell you what, though, even saying this, I know fans from states outside Victoria will be going, oh, here we go. Our clubs travel 11 times a year, and that's quite true. And look, the last 5 losing grand finalists have been interstate sides, but they've all had pretty good records on the road during the season to get them there. And look, the Bombers have just got to be better than that in any environment. As Ross Lyon said a few years ago when the Dockers were up and running, we play anywhere, we win anywhere. You've just got to have that attitude. And Essendon's just got to be mentally tougher.
There can't be top 4 for Essendon until they beat that chink in their armour. Well, it's not a hoodoo. Hoodoo suggests some curse or some sense of bad luck. This is a weakness.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Over to you.
Not hot. I've been to Etihad when it was Colonial, when it was various other guises, and I have never enjoyed watching football there or on TV with the roof open. The shadows that are cast can be confusing, nightmare for broadcasters, cameramen and those people responsible bringing you the game in its best light. But the AFL this season have signalled that they want more games played there with the roof open, weather permitting, which includes twilight games, etc. And I just don't enjoy watching games there that are affected not by the weather, but by the shadows cast by unusual roofing structures.
You're going to hate me for this, and a lot of people will, but I'm pretty old school about this. Now, having said that, watching that game with the roof open, I really did notice how hard it was to pick up on TV. However, football is an outdoor sport predominantly, and why is it that until we had a stadium with a roof, no one ever used to talk about, oh, I hate going to the footy because, you know, the sun gets in your eyes? Ever heard of this?
Yeah, but at Etihad Stadium, it's not outdoor football. The roof is more equivalent to the sunroof in a motor car. It doesn't...
I've never had one.
It doesn't... Really?
Well, I've had a car, but not with a sunroof.
Oh, sorry, I'm confused. It doesn't... When open, it's not the entire stadium that is opened up. There is still a fair bit of overhang. So,
yeah.
You know that there was a... Remember the famous grand final between Adelaide and Melbourne Victory in the A-League?
Yeah, in 2000, the first one,
Yeah,
when Archie Thompson scored 68.
Yeah, he scored 5. 6-0 to Melbourne Victory. It rained that night, but the roof was opened in such a way that it was pouring on part of the crowd, and some other people didn't even get a sense that it was raining.
Just one quick one on the aesthetics. Don't you find it depressing to have a beautiful day outside and you're trapped inside this sort of Thunderdome? I find the whole thing really sort of...
Claustrophobic?
Well, a bit. You know, it just drags you down. I mean, the sun's shining, you know, play in the sun.
Yep, thanks, Dad.
No, I am old school. My go again. I'm going to finish off with a hot on a positive note. And speaking of games at Etihad, West Coast has had a pretty ordinary record on the road. They had a really good win over the Bulldogs. But I think the best thing that came out of it was the form of Liam Ryan. And you can tell already this guy is going to be... I think he's better than a cult figure. I think he's going to be a real star for them. He's a pocket dynamo, isn't he? Not much of him, but what a leap. Incredible leap. He's great at ground level, kicked 3 goals, had his 14 disposals. I think he'll be one of those guys that's very damaging with minimal disposals and really adds a whole new dimension to their forward setup and just excitement plus. I love watching guys like that are terriers on the ground but are prepared to back themselves and fly for marks, and it was fantastic to watch.
Yeah, there's so many footballers now constricted by team rules and jobs and roles to play that when we get a really spectacular player like a Liam Ryan burst on the scene, he's embraced with both hands, isn't he?
Absolutely. All right, you wrap it up.
I'll finish off with a hot, and in the star-studded GWS side, we have, I believe, after 2 games, 6 votes in the Brownlow medal, and maybe because of injury and the star status placed upon players coming out of contract, the question as to who the best of the Giants is has been muddied a bit. But I've got no doubt it's Stephen Canelio, because he has it all. He is so tough in and under. He holds his feet. He's got hips. He's got that core of steel. Yet when he's on the move, he's lateral and he's dashing. His kicking's good. He knows where the goals are, and he's good overhead. I think he's better than Kelly. I'll say that. I think he's the best GWS player, and that doesn't mean Kelly is shabby. You can still be a star and run second to him.
Gee, I love that expression, core of steel. It makes me think of Superman or something like that.
Well, I look at him and he has those sort of, he's got the big square jaw.
Is he faster than a spooning bullet?
Just on Superman.
Yeah, quick.
Up in the sky.
Yeah.
What in the next 2 lines?
It's a bird, it's a plane, no, it's Superman.
Well, who would trust anybody who can't tell the difference between a bird or a plane?
Well, I can think of some football commentators who
It's a bird, it's a plane. Mate, I don't care for your third opinion.
Now, just quickly on Canelio, don't you love it when you see an emerging star in their infancy and you can say, I remember seeing his... Well, the first time I saw Canelio was when he played as a 16-year-old for Swan Districts in the 2010 WAFL Grand Final, one of the great West Australian Grand Finals. They pipped Claremont to win their first flag for 20 years, and Canelio was a superstar in that game. And it's great to see him now doing it at AFL level. I agree entirely. He's a gun.
Despite his name, he's no bunny.
Very good. Okay, there's Hot or Not for this week. That's the more reasoned, rational part of the show. Now it's time for some complete insanity because, Finey, it's time for the Rant On! Rightio, Finey. That time of the week again, we're going to exercise our demons. We're going to get rid of any bees lurking around in whatever particular bonnet we happen to be wearing. I'm angry. Are you angry?
I want honey. All that bee talk.
Okay. Well, I'm staying angry. You stick with honey. I'm angry. I want you to count me in.
3, 2, 1, start buzzing.
I'm pissed off with the state of AFL club uniforms, Finey. There's no standards anymore, no tastefulness. It's a cesspit of a hodgepodge of technicolour awfulness, and it's damaging the very fabric of our game, pardon the pun. This all goes back to those goddamn Hawthorn Harlequin numbers they trotted out for the pre-season comp back in 1995. Clearly the Hawks are taking the piss, but no one else seemed to get the joke, and now they're all doing it. You thought football fashion couldn't get any worse than those T-shirt things Geelong were running around in during the JLT series? Well, think again. How's Carlton's grey shorts last week? Did someone in the laundry at Princes Park put the whites in with the colours? Or are they so hard up out there these days they can't afford some white king? And what about the off-colour chamois patches on the back made to look like pockets? Took me back to the good old denim days of the mid-70s, Finey. Next thing you know, the Blues will be running out in pairs of Amco peaches with 28 pockets and 76 copper rivets, and a tag that your opponents spend all day trying to rip off your duds in a bid to win that mythical free pair of jeans you were supposed to get if you collected enough of them. Then on Saturday, I turned my TV on and there's Melbourne going all retro with that punsy royal blue thing they made a big deal about getting rid of 30 years ago. Come on, Demons, I thought you wanted respectability. If I was Melbourne, the last thing I'd want to be revisiting is the early 1980s. No wonder Brisbane nearly mowed down their 7-goal lead. That started off with Hogan, Garlett and Jones on fire. By late in the last quarter, they were channeling Peter Tossell, Ted Fidge and Danny Hughes instead. You know what? The AFL thinks people don't want GWS to win a flag because of all those draft concessions. Nothing could be further from the truth. I'll tell you why the thought of a Giants premiership turns people's stomachs. It's because no self-respecting sporting organisation can be taken seriously if one of its official colours is bloody charcoal.
I agree with you.
Charcoal?
The whole thing I agree with, except one point.
Which?
Those shorts that Carlton are wearing.
Yeah.
I could see them in the 1970s on one player.
70s?
He
no.
just happened to be almost the toughest player going around.
Lee Matthews?
No, Don Scott. He was a
Oh, yes.
Scotty was a swish.
Only worn with a cravat.
Correct.
However, on field.
He wouldn't have worn them on field.
No.
I could see him going to a Brownlow in a pair of those.
I was going to say tribunal hearing. There was a great picture of Don Scott coming out of a tribunal hearing with a cravat and a jacket and all that stuff.
And that.
The man bag.
The leather.
Oh, you couldn't have a man bag back in the 70s. That was the cause of much ribbing from his Hawthorn colleagues. But again, not for the first time, we digress. You deserve a nice, angry build-up. And I'm going to give you one by counting you in aggressive fashion right now.
Thank you.
3, 2, 1, rant!
I would have thought the recent goings-on in South Africa would have empowered, invigorated cameramen, sporting cameramen around the globe. After all, South Africa's sporting cameramen, their cricket watchers, took time out from scouring the crowd for scantily clad, dare I say, buxom young girls, to really show the world that Australia were cheating. And in doing so, they unveiled one of the greatest controversies in cricket history, showing that the sporting cameraman has a role to play if he's vigilant. Fast forward to the AFL. Do they learn anything? No. It's once again another, seemingly, season of cut to crowd for the same old faces. Let's start with Sunday's game between West Coast and the Western Bulldogs. Willie Rioli makes his debut and the Rioli family turn up en masse to support him. I now know that family so well, I can tell you what Auntie Rioli wears and what younger cousin Rioli was eating for lunch because they showed them every single time they cut away from the game. And then on to Monday's game. Jeff Kennett is back as president of the Hawks. Don't we know it? Over and over and over again. Along with Eddie Maguire and Kochi from Port Adelaide and Collingwood respectively, we have the three presidents that will be shown over and over and over. At the end of the game between Hawthorn and Geelong, Hawthorn hit the lead in the last quarter, built up a bit of a break, cut to Kennett. Geelong start coming back. Parfitt goal, scores a level, cut to Kennett. Roughhead marks, cut to Kennett. Roughhead scores, cut to Kennett. At this point, Kennett knows what's going on, and he's acting in a particularly calm manner for Kennett. The siren goes, Hawthorn wins, cut to Kennett. And what do we see? Jeff Kennett calmly taking his jacket off the back of his seat. There are 72,000 fans at the ground. Geelong fans inconsolable, some crying. Hawthorn fans celebrating like the Americans did the day that the Second World War was declared over, kissing in the streets. But no, we got cut to Kennett. Why don't we cut to all the presidents? How about Bob Sharpless of Brisbane? Who, you say? I don't know. I think his name's Bob Sharpless. There's Tony Shepherd of GWS. Never seen him. And of course there's Fremantle's Dave Alcock. Or Allco. I don't know if it's Allco or Allcock, because I've never seen him. But I'll tell you this. I've seen Mick Malloy plenty at the footy. You get a full eyeful of him at Richmond games. Eric Banner if he's in town at St Kilda games. And, as I've already mentioned, presidents who appear on TV or ex-politicians. Come on, smarten up, cameramen at the AFL. There's more than just 4 or 5 well-known heads at the footy. How about mine?
Hear, hear. Very well articulated, and I could not agree more. You know, there's one worst thing that can happen with this, and it's a cricket thing, and I suspect we're going to take it on board soon enough. It's during play, cutting to the commentators as they're calling the action.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that on the cricket.
Well, given the sort of football commentary we're subjected to these days, Finey, that would be absolute sadism at its worst.
That would be bad.
No, it's a great rant. I couldn't agree more, and jolly good show, old chap.
And I think I left out Family Silvani at Carlton.
Oh, they're right. I like Sauce and Joe and their boys. They're a great family. All right, that's enough for this week. It's been a bit of a marathon, the old Easter round. Any final thoughts?
Well, Easter weekend football might be long, but it's in safe hands as long as we always finish up on a Monday with Hawthorn Geelong. God bless those two teams.
What an epic. I hope they're jousting on Easter Monday in not just decades, but centuries to come, Finey, even on other planets. I tell you what, though, we're 2 rounds into a new season, and I haven't dragged this one out for a few years, but I'm so moved by today's game that I'm going to call on it now. Uncle Doug Elliott. Woof, woof! You pinched my line. I'm going to go with it again. Anyway, Footy, it's great to have you back. Woof, woof! We'll see you next week.